morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Connecticut Valley School of Dance, Music and Dance Podcast Studio. I'm your host, Dave Kosminski, and this is another edition of Connecticut Valley Podcast. And basically, what I got, we have an old friend. In fact, he's a neighbor of mine. Okay, Professor Gary Yohe, who is in the house, and Professor Yohe has been retired at Wesleyan University and has served on the faculty for many, many years. So. And has written many, many articles on climate change and so forth. In fact, I think you were on one of my original Portland on the Move shows way back in when we had it over in Cromwell, right?
I was. This place is easier to find than now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So how you doing, Gary?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming
We
down.
survived the snow.
Oh, my God. It was backbreaking, my God. We haven't had one like that in many years.
10, I think.
Yes,
like that.
at least. So, and they're predicting 1 to 3 Wednesday. We don't need it.
No. We got plenty, thank you.
For sure. So, tell me, Gary, how did your, endeavor of interest in climate change start?
It started around 1980.
Okay.
I had done my PhD work at Yale, and one of my advisors there was a now Nobel laureate, William Nordhaus.
Okay.
I learned environmental economics from him and Charlene Koopmans, who's also a Nobel laureate. And I was trained to be a microeconomic theorist thinking about decision-making under uncertainty. My PhD dissertation was prices versus quantities. And I was off doing that. And in 1980, Bill phoned me up and asked if I wanted to be involved in a National Academy of Sciences report on changing climate. And it seemed like a good idea at the time, so
okay.
I did that. And we published a report called Changing Climate in 1981.
Yep.
The panel was 8 people. There were 3 economists in the room, and there might have been 5 economists in the world that knew anything about climate change.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was really at the very beginning.
So you were on the short list, so to speak.
Yeah. And so we got to organize our thoughts and publish something that organized people's thoughts. We didn't know anything about damages or consequences. We did know that the world wasn't cooling, it was warming, and that the suspicion was at that time that humans were to blame. So Bill and I's our task was to create a short, small model that would generate distributions of possible temperature changes through 2100.
Oh, okay.
And that we did.
Okay.
And after that, there was just so much low-hanging fruit for an economist who knew anything about climate change
Right.
that I completely changed my focus.
Mm-hmm.
Wesleyan was wonderful. They didn't care as long as I was publishing. And I stopped publishing in major economics journals and started publishing in Nature and Science, and that was fine as long as they met my classes and
Right.
attended
sure.
an occasional faculty meeting. They were happy with that.
So the correlation between climate change and economics, okay, how did you make that connection? Or how?
Well, back then it was that economic activity generated by consuming and burning fossil fuels generated emissions, which generated concentration increases in the atmosphere that generated higher temperatures. A little while later, we went to the other end of the causal spectrum and thought about the economic consequences of the warming and how that would be affected. And that was sort of brand new stuff.
Now, is climate change perceived today as a hard sell in the general public, or?
In the scientific community, yes, except for some notable exceptions that work in Washington. A fellow named Tony Leisowitz at Yale does annual surveys of the American population, and he finds through scientific surveying, not polling, but really legitimate academic interest, that a majority of the American population does think that climate change is happening and that human activity is to blame. And some of his micro stuff says that in every congressional district in the country, more than 50% of the people feel that way.
Really? Okay. Now, when you basically put it all of the, I know, in fact, I have a couple of the articles here that you did publish as far as that goes. But when you put all of this together, and as far as that goes, I know a lot of times when you're getting into pushing a concept, if you would, you know, as far as that, you get into a situation where you always have pushbacks. And so how did you deal with that?
Well, they started seriously in 1995 when a good friend of mine working for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change as an author of a chapter in the Second Assessment Report wrote a sentence that said the evidence shows a discernible influence of human activity on the climate. That alone, because it was a consensus conclusion by the IPCC, attracted the attention of deniers and skeptics and people that really opposed it. And they were the same people that opposed, and the public's knowing anything about the dangers of cigarette smoking, they brought out the same tactics.
To put the little notice in the back, can cause cancer.
Yeah, or at a gas station, the gas you buy may cause warming. No, they got alarmed. They got well funded. They brought out the same old tools, not only going after the science but also the scientists, and in trying to undermine not only the credibility of the science but the credibility of the scientists. And that started in 1995. Along about 2002 or 2005, most of us who were doing this work collectively decided that trying to convince those people that they were wrong was sort of silly. And we were just going to have to focus on the remaining 85% of the U.S. population and try to defend the science from attack, defend the scientists from attack, but push the science forward.
Right.
Examining the findings that we already believe were true to see if they were still true. They turned out to be, the evidence got stronger and stronger and stronger, and the general conclusion that extreme events caused by human-induced climate change were getting more frequent and more intense, and the damages were getting much larger.
Wow.
And we were right, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately. Now, has the recent EPA funding clawbacks affected the whole situation?
The EPA and the Department of Energy posted some cherry-picked science to support debunked theories and proposals about the impacts of climate change. It unified the scientific community. The EPA decision of this month started in about a year ago when the administrator said that they were going to rescind the endangerment finding that allowed the EPA to restrict carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions under the Clean Air Act. Their argument was based on their bogus science for a while. The second iteration went out for public review. There were 550,000 comments from the public, including the National Academies of Science and the science community and things like that. So they claimed that they reviewed those comments and edited their initial finding draft appropriately. And if you look at it, they changed almost nothing. They just reinforced their citations from their bogus work. And then in January, they said that they were going to, in fact, publish a finding that rescinded the conclusions from 2009. they sent it out for agency review across the federal government, like those agencies are going to object at all. And so last week, they published in the Federal Register a signed, sealed, and delivered new endangerment finding based mostly on legal arguments that the former finding overstepped the boundaries of what the executive branch could do. It was only Congress that could do it, and completely took out all of the contentious findings.
Really?
Yeah, they claimed that the administrator was concerned about the validity of the science arguments, and they weren't going to base their decision on that. So they took it all out.
Wow, that's too bad.
It's irresponsible. If you're going to make a decision that's going to affect every American and people around the world and people who haven't been born yet, you don't do it simply by ignoring stuff you don't agree with.
Right. Well, similarly, as well as I'm involved, quite heavily in the national water industry and so forth, and we ran into a similar situation with EPA findings on basically EPA's. We as a state agency are required to investigate unfunded mandates as far as in relation to contaminants that potentially can harm the water, and the administration is just pooing that, as far as that goes, and and unfortunately it's an uphill climb when you start to put the science together.
It is. Those of us who think hard about this are worried that they've already done an enormous amount of damage, pulling back on those efforts, underfunding or disfunding, collections of data, hiding the data so you can't really find them on the websites, and otherwise interrupting the science community and the science infrastructure. And if they come out of office and we want to turn around, it's not going to happen overnight. They didn't turn off switches. They tore down entire facilities and infrastructure, and it's just going to take a long, long time to recover.
Yeah, if it does,
If it does, we've come to realize that the mantra should not be we have to reconstruct things the way they were. If they've been torn down, why not build them better and more equipped to handle the current circumstances rather than the circumstances of the late decades of the last century when those things were being put together.
Now, your interaction with Carnegie Mellon, is that also through Wesleyan?
That was through my work.
Okay.
And there were a very close friend, Hadid Al-Odabadi, was there. Granger Morgan was there. They had a center for modeling impacts of climate change. So I was involved with them and committees to advise their work. And they are among the coterie of friends that I have. I used to travel a lot. Most of my friends I never see anywhere but someplace like Pittsburgh or Paris or Sri Lanka or someplace like that.
Wow. I remember many years ago, I was asked to speak on water conservation in Sri Lanka. And, and at that time, I did not go because at the time the civil unrest was at an all-time high. So I opted not to.
Yeah. Sri Lanka was a host of an IPCC meeting in Colombo, and it was during the height of the fighting there. And I remember that we were staying at the Intercontinental Hotel 2 blocks up from the country's capital, and there was a bombed out bus in the parking lot.
Yeah.
I went for a walk, and somebody in a uniform came up and asked to see my papers. So I showed him, and he said, "Okay, fine. Why don't you go stand over there behind that shed?" And I looked at him and I said, how about if I go stand behind that wall over there? And he said, well, that's an even better idea.
Oh, wow.
And I stood over there. He still had my papers, so I couldn't go anywhere. And some other poor fellow was walking the other way, and all of a sudden 6 people with big guns and stuff picked that person up and dragged him away. Fairly cordially compared to what I see on TV these days. But
Yes.
Anyway, finally the guy said, why don't you come and get your papers? And if I were you, I'd go back to the hotel.
Yeah, you get to a situation where get out of Dodge here. My God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I was fortunate enough to also speak on water conservation in Botswana.
Mm-hmm.
I did have years ago. I had a collaboration with one of the professors at the University of Harvard that did the international studies, and I had a gentleman that came from Botswana, Talamazaga, and he was, ironically enough, we had a lot in common. He was actually a BBC recording artist. And we ended up doing a concert, on Botswana music at the library.
Fantastic.
And it was interesting, but he got me over there, and we talked on water conservation and many other things. But it was an eye-opening experience. It really was. But great country, great. Anyway, what do you like to do for hobbies?
That's a really good question. In the summertime, I play some golf. The friends that I play with are actually going to play at Chris Cody's golf shop on Friday indoors. We're going to play 9 holes or 18, I don't know what. But I do that. I do gardening. And my wife Linda and I spend a lot of time attracting hummingbirds to our house, but also monarch butterflies. And we spend the summer finding infant caterpillars,
There we go.
a quarter of an inch long or sometimes, bringing them inside, feeding them with milkweed, letting them grow into
Yes.
big caterpillars and go through all of the stages and turn out to be real monarch butterflies.
Yes.
And we release them.
Yes. My housekeeper does that. She feeds them with milkweed, and it's fun.
It's really, really fun.
Yeah, she enjoys it. She really does. My gosh. So you also are involved. In fact, you have 2 daughters, correct?
I do.
And one lives close, and one no, they both.
They both live in the D.C. area.
Oh, okay.
One in Arlington and one in, what's its name, Gaithersburg. Older daughter is an attending at the NIH hospital and has her own NIH lab. She does research on pediatric oncology.
Nice.
And the other one has her own consulting firm and does health stuff.
Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My God.
But it rolls uphill.
Well, it's funny you mentioned golf. Chris Cody. I have Chris Cody coming on next week, and we're going to talk about the golf in Portland. Mm-hmm. Portland is the golf capital of Connecticut.
That's what they say. Yes, and to some degree it really is. And there are courses that meet the needs of different levels of golfer.
Absolutely.
At my age, I play the West course a lot.
Okay, it's a par 70 course there.
It's par 60.
Is it a par 60? I thought it was. I know the big course is par 73, I think.
Yeah.
And so forth. But and of course Quarry Ridge that's on the narrows up there. You got to be pretty honed in. Keep it in a fairway.
Yes. And you need a cart.
Yes. When you get our age,
even people that are 20 need a cart on that course.
Yes, I think. Or you're part mountain goat. My gosh, for sure. I know that's hopefully we can get through this winter. This has been a winter of epic proportions, and we don't need any more snow. But I feel we're going to get a little bit more, and but they say spring is coming.
That's what they said. The groundhog was a little discouraging, but he was right.
Sometimes you see on Facebook and they picture the groundhog said, "I did this."
I told you.
I told you.
I told you so. Yeah, there is a climate explanation for at least the first storm, which was spawned by the Arctic blast that came down. The Arctic has been warming faster than any part of the planet, and the atmospheric conditions have weakened there to the point where they no longer keep in the Arctic air.
Okay.
So the air that created the storm 4 weeks ago actually came from Siberia and wandered up across into the pole, and there was a weak southern side towards the United States, and down it came.
There we go, and there we are. And there you have it. Fantastic. All right. Anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah,
What are your new projects? I know you have to have a project.
Oh, I'm writing lots of stuff. I collaborate with 6 other people, friends, colleagues from IPCC days to write weekly in a Substack presence called Climate Cafe at climatecafe.substack.com. We've been writing for the general public for 4 or 5 years. We had spent our careers writing for each other, and that was very, very rewarding, and we felt we were saving lives, and that was a good thing. But trying to get our knowledge out turned out to be a real challenge. And it was really hard to do, but we do that now, and we have weekly postings. We post other people's work sometimes. Sometimes it's ourselves. I publish some things in something called The Conversation that is distributed electronically in 4 continents. And instead of reaching 200 or 300 people, I now reach 10 to 15,000.
Wow.
Which is kind of fun. So we do that, and we try to keep people up to date with what's going on. We had a lot to say about the endangerment finding in last May and in July and again in December and then certainly again in January and February of this year and things like that. I've written a collection of pieces for Substack called Show Me the Data. And it's for people who are interested in, how can we find a picture that's in fact worth 1,000 words? You don't have to spend 1,000 words explaining it. That shows how we know that the planet is warming. How do we know that human activity is to blame? How do we know that damages that we're seeing can be attributed to climate change and warming? So that keeps us busy. Between we 6, we probably have 200 years of experience in writing climate science and assessments.
Now, do you find social media as a new vehicle to get things out? Yeah.
We decided that we weren't really getting it out because we weren't using social media.
Okay.
I mean, we'd publish in The Hill, and 500 or 600 people would see that, and a lot of them were pretty important, but it didn't really get out. We would publish some things in The Guardian or Scientific American, but for those places, it was already people that understood the climate who wanted to understand what was going on now.
Okay.
And so we thought it was a necessity that we try to figure out how to do that. We didn't know how. And a lot of us don't really have a social media presence. When I was vice chair of the National Climate Assessment for President Obama, we were told, don't go on social media. So I don't have a LinkedIn account that I participate in or Facebook or anything like that. But we still want to get stuff out.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. Now, when you collaborate with your colleagues, do you do it via Zoom or how do you do it?
Yeah, we meet weekly, and we go over each other's works. Sometimes we publish jointly. Sometimes we just take lots of comments from each other and put them together for 1 or 2 authored pieces. The weekly 1 hour Zoom meetings start with 20 minutes of current events, and then probably 40 minutes or so of actual work on papers. What are you doing? What are we going to do? What are we going to post? And things like that. And then finish the hour with 30 minutes of group therapy.
Okay.
So that, if anybody's counting, that adds up typically to an hour and a half.
Okay.
But we do it every week, and we all come on, and they are committed, as am I, to never make a mistake and never write outside our sandbox.
Okay. Well,
So we can't be shot at as writing political stuff, but people can interpret it politically because people have made climate change political.
well, I mean, a lot of things, especially in this political environment that we're living in today. It's for those who are, you've got the left and you've got the right and you've got the middle, and sometimes never the twain shall meet,
Right.
As far as that goes. But,
Well, we share a sense of responsibility. We've all lived extraordinarily privileged professional lives. And Václav Havel has pointed out the difference between hope and optimism, that you don't have to be optimistic to have hope. You don't have to necessarily believe that it will actually make things better. You just have to have the hope that all of your privilege and all of your skills applied to this thing it's what you can do, you're good at it, and you have a responsibility to do as much as you can.
Sure. Well, I mean, have you ever considered doing a podcast?
We don't know how to do that, but we've been on podcasts.
Okay. Well,
Like this one.
we have a studio here. I mean, if you'd like to, collaborate and and possibly do something that's podcasting right now is the fastest growing media out there. Everybody, you don't have to sit in front of a computer to absorb the material,
Right.
and people can do it on their phones, in their ear, on their, whatever.
Oh, thank you.
So it's an opportunity. I'll extend the the offer if you want. We have
Oh, thank you.
we can do green screen here. We can do we have camera, or if you want to do just audio, you can do that too. But it's an opportunity, and that's another part of being in the social media spectrum. As far as that goes. So anyway,
Well, thank you. You asked if I want anything else I wanted to bring up. There is one thing, and you just gave an example of that, Dave. You've been a spectacular citizen of the town and of the state and of the world, and it's been a pleasure to know you for all these years, and I admire what you do.
well, I'm privileged to be one of your neighbors. My God, and thank you. And just so everybody knows, I approached Gary in my role as a selectman. We were kind of given the opportunity to fill boards and commission members, and Gary was nice enough to step up on the Ethics Commission. So congratulations on being a full-fledged member of our Ethics Commission.
Thank you.
All right.
Everybody should know that I made sure I was up to date with my taxes before I took the oath.
There we go. Fantastic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this episode of Connecticut Valley Podcasts. Okay, and we are here in the studio with an old friend, Professor Gary Yohe. And Gary, thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge and expertise with me and the world. So until we meet again, that is all.
Thank you very much.